involved in treating diabetes? I know that you're an endocrinologist, so I suppose that's you've had plenty of years to be able to study and work with people. And so how far back do you go with treating diabetes?
Around 20 years.
Okay, and in the 20 years that you've been practicing, you've been a Baptist for how long?
Now it's going to be 3 years in January.
Okay. And so from your observations, what do you see in terms of people being diagnosed with diabetes? Do you see it like climbing? Do you see it kind of even? I mean, from your perspective, what do you see?
No, I think it's the incidence of diabetes is increasing, no question.
It is.
Absolutely, okay. Yeah. It's been shown. Sorry.
No, go ahead.
Well, this is something not only based on my perspective, but it's been shown in epidemiological studies. The CDC always puts out these incidence charts that they do every 2 years or so. And since the 1990s, the curve has been climbing up every year.
Really?
In North America, I'm talking about, but worldwide as well.
And what do they attribute that to?
Well, it really parallels the increased epidemic of obesity. So, the two curves are parallel together.
Okay.
And so you can establish a correlation there. And obviously, diabetes is the occurrence of diabetes is an interplay of the genetic predisposition and the environmental factors. But it sounds like the environmental factors have played a bigger role lately in terms of increasing the caloric intake, decreasing exercise, sedentarism, and so on. So that results in obesity, which in turn will trigger diabetes in those at-risk populations.
Makes sense. So what do you do as a physician when you meet somebody and you diagnose them that they have diabetes? What do you do next?
So usually by the time I meet somebody, they have already been diagnosed by the primary doctor. Not to say that I have not encountered newly onset diabetes. I've always seen that also, but usually, you see, they have been seeing their primary doctors first, and eventually they get referred to the endocrinologist after they have been diagnosed already. But in any event, usually what we do is I have to say, I'm blessed in Baptist because we do have an ADA certified accredited program, which is a multidisciplinary approach to the problem, right? Where there is more, not just me, the doctor behind the desk treating this person, but there is a group of diabetes educators, nutritionists, and there are group sessions that are involved, etc. So we try to plug this person into the diabetes program, which is not just seeing me, but it involves all these, what the ADA recommends to do this multidisciplinary approach. So from my perspective, obviously, we're going to review what kind of alternatives we have in terms of pharmacologic therapy. And of course, depending on the severity of the situation, depending on whether there are complications or not, and so on, you choose one type of therapy versus another. But at the same time, in parallel, all this lifestyle modification starts. And again, this is essentially what the diabetes program is for. We call those DSME and DSMES. Diabetes it's diabetes self-management education, and that the acronym is DSME, and DSMES is the surveillance, which is the acronym that the American Diabetes Association has used to name these programs that need accreditation and so on.
Okay. All right, so I mean, basically, it's a full program that people need to be involved with. It's not just
Absolutely.
taking medications. It's not just watching your diet, and it's not just exercising, but it's doing all of these things to work in different ways, but all together to to bring people back to better health,
Absolutely.
to lower their blood sugar, and exactly.
And then you have to also include even mental health providers, group sessions. It's a complex disease. It takes a toll in the person's emotional status and economic status and everything.
Sure.
And so yes, you're right. I mean, the model of one single physician prescribing a medication and off you go and that's it. See you in 3 months doesn't work. That's why these type of programs.
Sure. So they have to monitor themselves constantly, correct?
Right.
They want to make sure that the sugar levels are correct. But this is also something that they take on. It's a life commitment because it's not like you can stop in 6 months and then go back to your old ways.
No, right. Correct.
So they need to really make a commitment to changing how they function, for the good, obviously. And we had talked earlier, with some of the other people about how that this kind of exercise regimen and diet, that it's good for everything. It's good for it's not just good for them, perhaps maybe for their partner, for their spouse. That this is a journey that they're all on together, and that it doesn't hurt for everyone to be watching their diet and to be exercising together. I mean, there's all good stuff.
In fact, the people who succeed the most are the ones that can count on a support system at home that do it with them, like you mentioned.
So this is not something that you do in a vacuum.
Absolutely right. Correct.
I mean, I suppose that it's difficult, in terms of watching what you eat and how you function, because you have dinner perhaps with other people, and you have to watch and stay within the parameters. I spoke to somebody who said that it was easier for him to eat at home and to have more control, to cook, to prepare. He knew what he was eating.
Yeah.
And that it helped him to maintain.
Right. Because unfortunately, I was talking about this the other day. The standard that we have, whatever you compare yourself to outside, it's quite bad. Meaning, our lifestyle in our society, it's bad. We sleep very little. We don't rest. We work too hard. We eat junk because it's quick and easy. We don't have time to cook. And the food that is available around is usually high in calories, processed, and so on. And so subconsciously, you get used to that as being your norm, your standard. And so that's terrible for a diabetic. And so you have to be the exception and not the rule in that environment. It becomes really hard for them to overcome this natural tendency that humans have to sort of imitate what's around you.
Sure.
So that's a big challenge for a diabetic, you see.
Right. I mean, I know that, like, when you're looking at ingredients and you're looking to see what it is that you're eating, you don't just look at the sugars, but you look at the carbs. You look at all of the impact of everything that you're eating.
Absolutely.
Yep. And you need to be trained. This is not something that people are taught just routinely, is it?
No.
Now, people don't grow up, and people in our society, they're not taught how to eat properly. They may be taught how to exercise when they're younger, but that changes too as you get older.
Correct. And the fact that people don't exercise becomes again the norm. So it's a multifactorial thing, because you're having somebody who has a specific condition, they're genetically predisposed to it, but their environment is totally against them because it's conducive to make that condition. Sorry, I'm driving and there's an ambulance.
Oh, yeah, no problem.
Sorry. One second. Let me just set myself on the side here. All right, I'm back. Sorry about that.
No problem. I heard you.
Right. Yeah. So I'm sorry, I forgot what I was saying.
Well, we were just talking about, how people are taught and that they need to learn how to, how to eat properly, how to exercise properly, and this is an ongoing thing. Now, just briefly, tell me why it's important that if it's not Baptist, if somebody lives in North Dade, they may not feel like, it's convenient to go to Baptist, but why is it good to go to some place like Baptist that has this multi-featured kind of program where you learn about diet, you learn about exercise, you have your doctors, and that everybody kind of works together? Why is that important?
Well, because again, you're up against the world pretty much, and so you need not only the education and the training and so on, but you need the ongoing support system.
Okay.
Again, and sometimes that people find that at home. At their own home, they'll have a support system and so on. But sometimes people don't have that. Either they're by themselves, or the home environment is actually detrimental to them. I have seen that a lot. And so they need this constant source of good energy or good knowledge of how things should be done and so on, so that you don't fail. Because this is what's hard. You see many diabetics at the beginning, after being newly diagnosed, to really engage in significant lifestyle changes and so on. But even those who do that, long term, the difficulty is to maintain it. You see, because you're again in an environment that is not conducive to maintain appropriate lifestyle.
Right. Look, I mean, if you live with other people and they're not, and they're eating junk food and they're keeping it in the house, I mean, it's very hard to be able to stay on a diet that's more healthy.
Right.
It's like trying to stop smoking, and you've got somebody who lives in the house and they're smoking away. It's like hard to stop.
Exactly.
Actually smoking. So, obviously, it's the more the more positive feedback you're getting, the better.
Right. So if you don't have that anywhere, at home, in your workplace and whatnot, well, you need a program. You need something that supports you that way.
All right, good. All right. Is there anything else that you want to talk about in terms of not the treatment of diabetes as such, but perhaps the other kinds of, the exercise, the diet? Is there anything that we haven't touched on that you think is important?
Well, I think the original idea was to talk about the resistance exercise. Is that correct?
Well, it means to talk about, exactly the kinds of exercises people can do, why it's important to exercise, but it's not just a question of getting your, if you're on insulin, to take shots or to just like cut out certain kinds of foods, but it's the whole lifestyle program.
So essentially, for example, a diabetic that exercises and doesn't lose weight. Let's imagine for a moment, because the common fallacy is that people think, okay, I'm going to exercise and that way I'm going to lose weight. Well, you won't if you don't restrict the calories, the caloric intake. So you do have to add that to the equation in order to lose weight. However, if you're a diabetic and you haven't lost weight, but you're exercising, you do see an improvement in the blood sugars. Sure. In other words, exercise, even when it doesn't result in weight loss, can result in an improvement of the blood sugars, because it's a very significant way of improving the way your body uses your own insulin. So it makes your own insulin much more effective. Okay,
sure.
Even when there isn't weight loss. Of course, it's going to be even better when there is associated weight loss and calorie restriction and so on. Now, what's been demonstrated over and over again in diabetes is that, intuitively, many people always think that aerobic exercise would be the ideal way of helping diabetes, because, of course, you are consuming more calories and so on. But it turns out that it's been demonstrated that it's the combination of aerobic exercise and resistance exercise that results in the best lowering of the hemoglobin A1C and so on.
Okay, and when you say resistance exercise, what are you talking about? What kind of exercise is that?
So isometric exercise, the type of, I don't want to say weightlifting because it's not like bodybuilding type of stuff, but more something that includes a little bit of strain on the muscle and a little bit of building up the muscle and so on. That in combination with the aerobic exercise results in better improvement of the glycemic control versus each one of these strategies isolated. See, the combination of both it's more than the sum of each one of them individually. Seems like diabetes.
And have you had patients who were able to come off of insulin by following, the proper eating and exercise regimens? Have you known of people who have been able to not reverse their diabetes, but to handle it, to keep their blood sugar low by eating properly and by exercising properly?
Absolutely. These are not the majority of them, but yes. Have I encountered over the years a few patients that are able to make this very significant change in their lifestyle and maintain it to the point that I have seen somebody who was able to come off of an insulin pump with using it's called U500, a highly concentrated type of insulin, to no insulin at all. I have seen that. Again, these are not the most common cases. Now, keep in mind that we're talking about type 2 diabetes. Obviously, if you're a type 1 diabetic, you can't come off insulin, right? You cannot do that. That's a very important thing to inform the community about, because you don't want any type 1 diabetic coming off insulin. But the type 2s, well, type 2 diabetes is a progressive disease. It does tend to get worse over time. Okay, that's the natural history of type 2 diabetes. And over time, the pancreatic secretion of insulin does become less and less and less over time.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that happens. And it's not uncommon after 20 years of diabetes type 2, people do become insulin dependent. Like they no longer produce enough insulin so that the oral medications work, and you got to give them insulin. Okay, so depending on this ability to really come off insulin, for example, in particular, as you mentioned, depends to some extent, okay, how much pancreatic reserve do I have? How long has this person been diabetic? If it's somebody who's been diabetic for 20 years, I mean, at that point, and they're already on insulin, at that point, it's unlikely. They're going to manage it better. They're going to reduce their insulin requirement. Their glycemic control is going to improve and so on. But to promise that person that they will be able to come off insulin, that's dangerous to do.
No, but they may be able to reduce the dependency. I mean, it will help. Right. It's probably not a fair expectation that you're going to come off of it, but, in terms of how much you need, you can probably reduce the amount, by eating and exercising properly.
Absolutely.
And taking a walk will bring down your blood sugar.
Yeah. And if you've been a diabetic for 5 years, let's say, and you're obese and sedentary and so on, and you're on insulin, you make significant changes, that's the person that could potentially, could even come off insulin. So I always tell them, because many patients, are resistant to even take medication and so on, and I always emphasize the importance of controlling the blood sugar as the most important way to prevent problems down the road. Right. Yes, medications do have some side effects, but you need to control the blood sugars. And I always tell them, look, if you within the next, to take it to an extreme to make a point, and I tell them, look, I'm not suggesting for you to do this, but let's say within the next 3 years, you become a triathlete. You start doing triathlons, right? Because you are so fit now that you're doing that. And again, I said, this is an extreme. I'm just trying to make a point. At that point, you very likely won't need any medication. But right now, this is a long process. Right now, you do need to take some medicine because you do need to bring down the blood sugars. Otherwise, this is going to cost you down the road.
Sure.
But again, I do emphasize, if you do this, if you change your lifestyle, you're likely to come off medicines. You're likely to manage your diabetes much better, and require be less dependent on pharmacologic therapy.
Sure. And you'll look and feel better too.
Absolutely. Oh, yeah. They feel like $1 million. Yes.
Sure. Well, terrific. Well, thank you very much.
No, you're welcome.
All right. I think we're in good shape.
Excellent. Okay.
Victoria.